This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Jeremy, welcome to Tech Talk.
Hi, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Interesting opportunity to explore what I know is a pretty hot topic, and that's cloud technology, and having an opportunity to speak to a subject matter expert that's involved in providing solutions in that arena to a lot of their customers. Let's talk a little bit about the reality of the safety of cloud, and we'll get into that in terms of especially compliance. But focus for a minute about your core competency. Tell us a little bit about what does the company do, and what's your unique selling point.
So Adtech Global started in about 1999 as a hardware manufacturing for call recording systems for a very large company called Witness Systems. That organization transitioned into what is known today as Verint. And over the course of a number of years, we've become a value-added reseller and a systems integrator and a support infrastructure for those types of implementations of that application. And it's been quite an evolution over the last few years in that we did, as an organization, begin to see the demand for cloud-based implementations of this particular large enterprise environment to that demand to grow as time went on. And so what we did as an organization is we tried to look through that future lens and say, okay, well, let's see what we can do to get this technology into the cloud as a SaaS-type offering. And so 3 or 4 years ago, that's what we did. We became the first and the largest deployment of Verint in the cloud. And I'm happy to say that we continue to hold that kind of badge where we are the largest implementation, several thousand seats out there today with many clients across a very diverse aspect of many types of businesses out there today.
Fascinating. You know, I know a lot of our listeners will be aware of Witness Systems and Variant for that matter, and it had to be one of the early startup success stories. I guess it would be almost a little bit myopic to talk in terms of startup going back as far as the innovation did, but it was a disruptive technology for its time, and certainly it's evolved into a pretty dynamic, ubiquitous capability, especially when we talk about workforce optimization. Let's talk a little bit about that. You guys host workforce optimization solutions in the cloud for your customers, but I want to go back to that point I was making earlier about the cloud being safe for companies, especially those that are concerned with compliance.
It's interesting that you bring that up, and one of the points that I would say is that I recently came back from spending a few weeks overseas with our team in the London office, which is responsible for the EMEA operations of the business. And over there we have data centers and things like that, and the same type of deployment. But one of the things that I noticed, Frank, is that when I'm out at any retail location or if I'm at a restaurant or something like that, and I give my credit card to pay for a service or a meal or something like that, it never leaves my hand. It doesn't get handed off to somebody, taken somewhere, swiped, and then brought back to me. It never actually leaves my hand or actually leaves my site. And over here in the States, that's just not the case. We tend to hand that off to somebody, they take it, they swipe it, they come back, or we hand it off to somebody at a retail establishment. And saying that over here and handing that type of card off for a transaction makes you far more vulnerable to any type of identity theft, hacking, anything like that, data theft or anything like that than you would in any type of cloud deployment that is currently in the enterprise today. And I like to draw that analogy out and tell people about that because essentially these things that you're pushing out into the cloud are quite a bit more secure than the last transaction that you had at a restaurant when you went out to eat last time.
Well, that's a great way to put it. I think there isn't any of us that don't wonder exactly where the card went and kind of keep your fingers crossed and don't think where did the money go, So let's talk a little bit about, I think, the perception that there is a sense of security if you're dealing with a software or a hardware or let's say a real technology, for lack of a better description. And yet a lot of thought leaders, and I know including your organization, feel that security is a mindset and that it's not an event, it's a process. Go into that a little bit.
Absolutely. Security is a mindset, it is a process, it is a procedure, and it is a posture. And everybody within the organization, including the client who is using the system, is responsible for security. And when I say that the client is responsible for it, they're responsible for adhering to password standards, not putting the Post-it note with their password on their monitor before they leave at night, as well as the person who greets people at our corporate office here at Adtech and who answers the phone. She is just as important in the security posture and procedure and chain of events as the super admin within the organization who has access to the switches, routers, firewalls, and SEM security event management stuff. Now, one's impact may be a little bit bigger than others, but it's the responsibility of us as technologists to inform everybody within the organization that these are the things that you should do to create a more secure environment with which you operate and provide services to your clients.
Now let's talk a little bit about, one of the things that we have an opportunity to do here at Tech Talk is we deal with every vertical across the entire horizontal spectrum, not just health IT or say fintech or even internet security for that matter. And yet everyone is talking about the cloud. Everything is moving in at a hyper speed in terms of what do they call it now, infrastructure as a service, and the actual letting go of what we would have thought to be kind of a hands-on secure type of an environment into, quote-unquote, this nebulous thing that we call the cloud. And yet this is only just the beginning. I know that from your guys' perspective, you're playing around with what's happening today, but maybe give us some insight about what you think as far as the cloud evolving.
Well, I think what it's essentially doing is it's commoditizing those large enterprise scale services and allowing smaller organizations to take advantage of those same features. You take exactly what we do as a business as a perfect example of this is that we take this very, very complex large deployment of an enterprise piece of software that would take tens of thousands of dollars in on-premise infrastructure to be able to run in a rational environment, and we are able to hand that to a small business that has 20 to 30 seats in a contact center and enable them to take advantage of these large enterprise class features. And that's kind of the first thing, Frank, but the other is that we're allowing the commoditization of the data center market and all of these infrastructure components that you're always still going to have those people out there who are infrastructure experts doing, but it allows people to do more with much less and at a much more rational price point.
But again, when we think in terms of, I know one of the things we had an opportunity just recently to deal with a fintech that put on a hackathon, and in terms of this case, not one of a security breach, but what they would relate to as an open innovation initiative, the idea that even innovation now is becoming sort of this collaborative cross-communication, quote-unquote, on a cloud. Go out 3 to 5 years if you can go that far. I think one of the things we always say here is that everything's so 20 minutes ago, it's kind of risky to go out a year, no less a couple of years, and talk about what security is going to mean as it relates to I think sort of a more of an open-minded, literally, figuratively, mindset, even as it relates not only to analytics, but even, for that matter, into innovation.
Absolutely. So I think that you're seeing the continuation of the consumer market driving the enterprise, and the consumerization of business, and that, if anything, enables very light, small, fast and agile organizations to create a device or an app or a piece of software that does something innovative and then drives business to change the way that they operate to become more agile and more efficient. And that, if anything, is going to continue, I think, for the foreseeable future in the 3 to 5 years down the road. And I think that you're starting to see cloud becoming more ubiquitous and this consumerization become more ubiquitous as it moves into pieces of business where you would never think in the past that it would have been able to penetrate.
A few years ago we talked about source to consumption. I think when we think about the convergence, I think you bring up such an aha point when you really bring up the coming together of consumerism and business. A lot of the things, like, for example, that I experience as a consumer, I want to get the same kind of service or capability as I deal with my commercial enterprise as well, that at some point that idea of source to consumption becomes pretty much, again, another, not to overuse the term ubiquitous, but just something that is the natural flow of how an ecosystem operates anymore. And I'm going to guess that a lot of that's going to have to do with cloud, obviously, and lot's going to have to do with technology. We've talked about the cloud as it relates to its, I guess, application or software capability. Any insights as to what you think technology is going to be able to enable this evolution?
What is it? Smaller, lighter, cheaper, faster? Is that? That's
no, I like the one that says it either saves me money or makes me money. That's the one that I like. No, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. If anything, I think you're going to start to see more open source, less barriers to entry in almost any kind of market, and also it's that commoditization of certain type of products and services that, if anything, allows it to extend out into the cloud, and you're going to start to see things to where smaller organizations or startup organizations or for lack of a better term, underfunded organizations or organizations are going to be able to take advantage of these enterprise-level feature sets and functionalities in a way that we have not been able to see in the last 10 years.
I guess that the cliche would be no decision is a decision, and that sitting still is not the answer. As we close our conversation, I'm a fairly good-sized $30, $50 million enterprise, really are considering a lot of technology aspects, maybe even considering some of the things that we've been talking about today. What would you tell me to do, Jeremy? Would you tell me to sit and wait and see where it all evolves, or take action now and build a relationship with somebody that can guide me through the change?
I would begin to build those relationships as soon as possible, early and often. I think that there's going to be a different role for technologists to play in this, almost as if the role of the cloud broker, if you will be able to become more to the forefront in the near future. I
like that term, cloud broker. I wonder if we'll hear it again. It's sort of like I mentioned earlier about semantics, keeping up with technology. There's always I heard the term just over the weekend about Open Innovation Initiative, and even though clearly that's an obvious term for that, that situation, drive innovation within 24 hours was pretty amazing. I'm always fascinated by a new description that better describes an evolution that's happening kind of right before our eyes. Jeremy, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to give us a little bit of insight about your company, but also some great ideas and wisdom as it relates to the evolution of cloud technology.
Well, thanks, Frank. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.